The Shepherd. No stars but a chilling drizzle, no snow but a muddy track, no light but a gloomy dawning, as George, with a bulky sack, set out on Christmas morning in boots, sou'wester and mac. Set out just the same as always to walk to his shepherd's shack. It was 5 to 7 in the morning, and down in the village street he could hear the sound of voices and the scuttle of hurrying feet. The communion service was starting, where men and their Maker do meet. But George took the track that went farmward, with corn for his ewe flock to eat. He knew that his missus was down there. She'd said he was heathen and bad. Those sheep could have waited till later. His absence from church made her sad. But George put those sheep before all things. He'd loved them since he was a lad, and any suggestion of shirking his work with his flock made him mad. Those sheep may have need of me, missus. I'll worship my God as I go. 'Tis not that I'm heathen or wicked. The Lord is a shepherd, he'll know. That's what he said to his missus as she stood in the pathway below, while he turned his back on the village and walked up the sodden hedgerow. What's special about Christmas morning? Why pretend it's a more holy day? To George it was not one jot different. To him Christ was born every day. Was born in devotion and service, whatever the pious might say. Was born in the frailty of creatures, and nurtured by all those who pray. He thought it all out as he stumbled, and clambered o'er stone wall and stile. He had plenty of time to think fully. It was every inch of 2 mile. The chill and the wet were distracting. The weather grew more and more vile, and he thought of those warm churchgoers on either side of the aisle. They'd be singing of angels and shepherds, of the birth of a heavenly boy, a boy who came down here among us to bring goodness, salvation, and joy. They'd forget he is daily rejected. To tell them would merely annoy. They could see the peace of the stable, while mankind goes out to destroy. And now the church bells were ringing as George reached the edge of the fold. His knees ached, his boots, they were sodden, and his fingers were numb with the cold. He was glad that his sheep weren't like some folks, still way up on the wold. A long walk he now found exhausting. At such times he knew he was old. The ewes came up eager towards him as he tipped up their trough for the corn. He counted and found one was missing, one missing this glad Christmas morn. He fed them, then searched for the lost one. He searched, though so wet and so worn. At last, in the distance he found her. He found her with lamb newly born. He stretched out his gnarled, numbed fingers and lifted the lamb from the ground. It was weak and now nearly exhausted, but otherwise perfectly sound. The ewe was suspicious and troubled, stamped nervously round and around, but she followed, compelled by devotion, as George took the lamb homeward bound. He brought them both down into shelter, and saw that the weak one was fed, for he knew that without his devotion this lamb would so soon have been dead. He forgot all about his own comfort and all that his missus had said, for somewhere deep down in his being he humbly believed he'd been led. And now the old shepherd was happy. His burden was suddenly light. His heart and his soul were all joyful. This chill day had conquered the night. Indeed, it was now Christmas morning. The church bells could tell of God's might. He had given his all for the firstborn, and he knew in his heart he was right. He pulled out the watch Gaffer gave him, and saw it was just 10:30. So he hurried home to his cottage and changed into dry clothes again. The bells were now ringing for matins as he opened the church door, and then he bent his old knees before Jesus, and Shepherd praised Shepherd. Amen.